What would you say is the most satisfying moment from your career?
The first two things that popped in my head were both of my comedy specials right when I got done taping them. Because I felt like both of them couldn't have gone better than they did.
Please make it loud for Steve-O!
So we're here at the Hollywood Improv. Explain the significance of this place to the comedy world.
And I mean, I don't know, it's certainly significant to me. This is where my comedy career began, really. I'm in a terrible situation. I'm Steve-O in my 40s. Either I just gotta stop with the dumb shit, or man, it's gotta get f***ed up, you know?
How do you go about coming up with material?
Yeah, I've just mined my experience and how I feel that I'm sort of racing against the clock to get through what I call my bucket list before it's difficult to watch me do this kind of stuff. All right, my buddies and I have been doing all this dumb stuff for almost 20 years, and nobody ever took a shit on a fan.
And what's the process you go about in terms of refining it?
Repetition, it evolves. Crazy, right? This never hit the fan, so I had to take care of this. And I went on Amazon. I bought myself the biggest, most powerful metal industrial fan you ever heard of, right? It's through repeating the material that it evolves and grows and improves. Thank you, I'm Steve-O.
Conversation with, like, I guess the Netflix comedy head and the challenges with that dialogue would be what?
It's so frustrating, man. After my first special came out and I put together a new act, it occurred to me one night, wow, all these stories that I'm telling transpired initially on camera. So what if I had a stand-up comedy act that had the footage of the stories I'm telling edited into it?
Sure.
It would be a multimedia comedy special, and that's just never happened. And I just got so excited about it. There's nothing like it out there. And it ended up, at the end of the day, I spent like $262,000 on the final product. And I just thought, this is it. So then I signed with this new agent, and they bring it out, and Netflix apparently is just so swamped with comedy specials that they only want to give them to the most prestigious, pure, lifelong stand-up comedians, of which they do not consider me to be one. And then for the other buyers, it's like, are you kidding me? In some cases, it was just so, like, outlandishly explicit that people are just like, we just can't show that. And then in other places, they're like, we're like comedy snobs, and you're not prestigious enough in the space. So I ended up sitting here like on this nuclear bomb that doesn't have a home.
But so you're still in the process of figuring...
I'm not going to part with it until it gets the love that it deserves.
What excited you in the first place about going on stage without having to do a stunt to make people laugh?
Nothing. Nothing.
Oh, really?
It wasn't my idea to try comedy the first time. I was asked to do it by somebody who wanted me to do a stunt. And I said, yeah, sure. And I showed up at the comedy club with no plan at all. And looking around, it just occurred to me that I couldn't do anything crazier than actually get on that stage and try to make people laugh, like doing stand-up.
The best thing is that when I was going to clown college, my cousin was going to mortician school. And our mothers were intensely debating whose son was a bigger loser.
How did it feel when you went on stage for that first time?
The first time, it was just shocking to me how welcomed I was. People were excited to see me. They were interested in what I had to say. The crowd was rooting for me. I felt a genuine sense that the crowd was rooting for me to do well, and they just want to have a good time. So before I left the comedy club that night, I scheduled my return.
Oh, did you?
I did. And before I came back, I actually wrote out an act, with jokes, and did 10 minutes when I came back and filmed it, and I was pretty happy with it. God, this is the most frustrating thing, and if I have a regret, this would be it, was that I wrote this act and it went reasonably well, and then I filmed doing it, and having done that, I determined that I needed to retire that material. For some reason in my mind, I needed to do something different every time I went on that stage, whereas if I would have just worked on that act and developed it and honed it, then I would have really been doing stand-up for a lot longer than I actually have now. But instead, I became confident. I went back with nothing prepared. So I thought, I'm just good at this. And I went on stage with no material, and I just bombed. It was just a desperately traumatic experience. It was awful.
And what made you motivated to go back after you had a couple bad experiences?
Well, in early sobriety, sitting in the comedy club just to watch the show, I just had this feeling I should do it. I should get on that stage. I should and it just kind of built up. And we were filming the third Jackass movie. And when I went in for my very first interview, before all the real promotional machine revved up, I was to be interviewed immediately after Dane Cook. And so I walked in there, I met him. It was, perfectly nice, and I said to him, man, I've dabbled in stand-up before, and I really want to dive in.
And he ended up mentoring you, kind of, right?
Yeah, he said, cool, man, I'll give you my number, we'll get you on stage next week. And I went on stage 2 comics after Sarah Silverman and immediately before Dane Cook. I was so nervous, and I went, then Dane Cook went, and then immediately after his set, he sits down with me to give me notes on my performance.
That's cool.
And he said that it was all about, the delivery of it. And I was just so, tense and nervous. He says, you've got to relax, dude. Mm-hmm. You've got to relax. And that was, I believe, on a Wednesday night. The following Friday, 2 days later, I, on my own initiative, I go and I'm at the Laugh Factory now to go and try it again. And he said, all right, now you're too relaxed, now you're trying to be relaxed. He said, you got to remember that this is a performance. You need to be an animated version of yourself. You got to have some energy. So it was I was in this weird Dane Cook mentor thing.
Right.
Just the fact that he took his time to take me under his wing, was just put so much wind in my sails. And then Jackass 3D came out. That day, I was on Howard Stern. I said to Howard Stern, I'm in the comedy club every night, man. I'm doing stand-up and I'm loving it. And I want to do a gig in New York tonight. And because I said that, my lawyer ended up calling me maybe a week or two later. He said, I don't know what happened, but I'm getting calls from all over the country. Everybody wants to book you doing stand-up.
Oh, that's great.
And I just went off on this career, and I just kind of learned as I went. And I was so passionate about it. And then about a year later, I'd show up at the Laugh Factory. I'd bump into Dane Cook. He goes, where have you been, man? And I said, dude, since I saw you last, I've headlined shows in 11 different countries. And he just laughs. And he goes, oh man, comics must fucking hate you. And overall, that's not been my experience. I think, for the most part, there's been very little animosity towards me doing stand-up from comics that I've been aware of.
The only thing that they like charged you for was your fancy custom-made clown costume. Not only did I get in, they waived my costume fee, so I went to clown college on a scholarship.
You're 19, 20 years old. You dropped out of college. What do you remember from begging for food?
Yeah, I was a freelance busboy. I would go help myself to whatever people left on the table in the restaurant. You could say that I dropped out of college. You could also say that I failed out of college. You could also say that I was kicked out of college. Because I was like...
You weren't committed to college.
I was unable to bring myself to class, hence my failing grades. I was completely formally kicked out of the dorms, and I upped and left without withdrawing.
You were kicked out of the dorms, why?
When I showed up at college, within 2 weeks of class starting, I was on final disciplinary probation my freshman year because they raided my room and found a bunch of marijuana and alcohol, and they relocated me to this 12-story dorm. And the staircase was separated from the building, by balconies. Mm-hmm. The staircase went up 13 floors.
Okay.
With access to the roof. But the door was locked. So one night, like all drunk, I smashed out the window on that 13th level, climbed out, and over like, I went over onto the roof. And then from the other side, you could just open up the door. I got away with it that first night, and then it was sort of a routine. We're like, oh yeah, hey, you guys want to go on the roof? And I would climb through and open up the door, and we'd be partying on the roof. And probably would have gotten away with it for considerably longer, but there was a radio tower that went up on the top of the roof. Uh-huh. And I climbed up that, and it's kind of, and I was spotted. What's this doing on the radio tower up above this building? And so I was up there, and the cops came onto the roof, and pretty cool way to get kicked out of the dorms. and then I got in a van with this guy who was also dropping out, and we drove from Miami to Northern California to try to get jobs at a ski resort. And along with that would come free lift passes, and I would be totally rad at snowboarding and become a famous professional stuntman, because that was what I was doing.
Right.
I was dropping out of college to become a professional crazy man with my home video camera. And there was no precedent for such a career. And everybody that I told this idea to just felt bad for me. Just thought, what a shame, what a loser, this guy's going nowhere.
Could you tell that when you were telling them?
I think so. And okay. I don't know that I believed that I was going to have any real success. And frankly, I had lost every job. I had been fired from every job I ever tried to have. I got fired from every job. I could not go to class. I could not do anything that responsible people do. I lacked the survival skills to make it in the world, and I felt sure about that. So I didn't think that I was gonna have any success. I figured I would probably just fail at life and die young, having failed.
Really?
Yeah, I think that was probably my core belief about myself. And so before I died, I wanted to document as much wild and crazy, entertaining stuff as I could. And I think, in a lot of ways, it was kind of like me packing my message into the bottle, mm-hmm. so that it could float around and I could exist after I was dead. I thought maybe being posthumously recognized for being a crazy man would do the trick. But yeah, so I got in the van with the guy. We had $600 between us. We drove from Miami to Northern California to start a new life. It wasn't snowing. There were no jobs. We turned around. We went back to Colorado, and just were homeless there for a little bit. I caught a ride with another dude, and we drove to Austin, Texas to have the government test drugs on us for money. And they do that for anything that comes in contact with people, toothpaste, this or that. But if it's more dangerous, then you get paid more. So we went for the most dangerous possible medical study where they tested on us drugs for pigs and cows called ractopamine hydrochloride. All they knew was that it was dangerous, that our heart rate would go faster. The target for the study was to give us this drug until somebody's resting heart rate was 160 beats per minute, which is hilarious. And I got $2,000 for 12 days. While we were waiting to get into that medical study, we were sleeping on a roof.
What do you mean sleeping on a roof? Like what? How did the idea for that come about?
Well, it occurred to me. I mean, at the time, I was sort of all into like climbing up on roofs and looking for gaps to jump or pools to jump into, and it seemed safer to climb on a roof that nobody would think to climb up on to sleep than to sleep on a sidewalk where you could be found and messed with. So we slept on a rooftop.
Because you're homeless.
Yeah.
Yeah. No money.
Right, yeah. I would do like backflips for like 50 cents or something. And then with 50 cents, I would go buy a 49-cent loaf of bread so that they would be looking at me buying the bread and not realizing that I had stolen the hot dogs. And then I would go from the supermarket with my stolen hot dogs and my legitimately purchased bread and like walk over to the 7-Eleven and use their microwave to microwave my hot dogs and use all their condiments, and it was a pretty good system.
Why did it, I mean, your dad obviously was really successful professionally.
Right.
Why not call home and say, hey, mom and dad, can I have some money?
It's a good question. I think that the true answer is that Dad instilled a level of pride in me that I wasn't willing to expect my parents to pay for me to be doing nothing that they considered productive.
How aware were they of what you were doing at the time?
They had no idea where I was in the world. They didn't know that I was in Texas, let alone having the government test drugs on me for money.
What did they think was going on with you?
They just hadn't heard from me for 6 months or so, which is sad. It's really sad.
How well do you recall being a clown in a Florida flea market?
I remember everything about it. I graduated from Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Clown College, which is, a rather prestigious accomplishment. I was not chosen for the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. I ended up getting a job on Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines as a clown, and I was fired unceremoniously. I was actually fired by the other clowns in my troupe.
How does that happen?
Well, they apparently went to the cruise ship brass, and they said, if Steve-O comes back for another contract, we all quit.
Why?
I was generally disrespectful. I didn't think that the stuff that they were seeking to do as performers was like cool, funny, or rad. And I didn't really care to participate with them and what they wanted to do. I had my own skill set, and it was sort of, I had a handful of really crowd-pleasing abilities. Mm-hmm. And I was sort of just renegade, rogue, rad clown. And it was disrespectful, and I didn't like that. And I deserved to be fired. But I also think I deserved to be told that that was the case. I had our boss clown, who was not part of our troupe, tell me in confidence. He said, I'm going to tell you something, and you can't let anybody know, because if it comes out that I told you, then I'm going to lose my job. Mm-hmm. But all of these there's a clown mutiny, and you're not coming back for another contract. So it's time to call up your skateboard buddies and try and get something to happen because you have no job. And thank God that he did that, because I sort of started planning, and I called up Jeff Tremaine, who would become the director of Jackass. And I told him, oh, dude, I'm on this cruise ship walking stilts, and I'm so terrified of falling over if anything happens and I fall, that I'm like, I know that's what I got to do. So I'm going to light my entire stilt costume on fire, and I'm going to have a unicyclist ride through my flaming stilts while a skateboarder jumps over my head and through a fireball that I'm blowing out of my mouth. And then I'm going to crack open a beer while I'm on fire and pound it as I tip myself over and crash on the ground.
And Jeff said what?
And Jeff said, yeah, we'll shoot that. So planned it all out. It happened on December 30th of 1999. This was the day that I met Johnny Knoxville. There's a whole shoot. I flew myself out to California, and I thought that I was shooting it for a skateboard magazine. Mm-hmm. At the time, Jeff Tremaine was in charge of Big Brother Skateboarding magazine, which had featured me fairly regularly at that point. And when I made this call to him, I was trying to get on the cover with this epic stilt stunt. Uh-huh. So I flew myself out to California with all the savings that I had from the cruise ship. I essentially spent it all just, trying to go be in a skateboard magazine. Yeah. And once I showed up in California, Jeff said, okay, now you've come this far, I'll tell you, we're not doing this for the skateboard magazine. We're doing this for a pilot for an MTV show. So congratulations, you're in. And then later we found out that MTV is particularly touchy about fire. And they said, no way we'll ever show that. That footage was never going to see the light of day. But it got me on Jackass. And thank God, because had it not all happened that way, instead of getting my spot on Jackass, I would have been floating in the middle of the fucking Caribbean Ocean juggling oranges for tourists on a cruise ship.
So Jackass premieres by week 2. It's the highest rated show in MTV's history. How immediately and in what ways did your life change?
It was overnight. The very next day after it aired, my life was totally different, which speaks to how much less fragmented the media was back then. Granted, with basic cable, there was still a lot of channels, but nothing like it is now. Being on the #1 show on MTV at that time really could change your life, it turned out.
What sort of political pressure was on MTV pretty soon after it came out to just get rid of the show?
There was very understandable pressure on MTV, because here we've got this show, despite its warnings, that all these stunts are, don't copy them. Kids were showing up in hospitals, all over the place.
Really?
Yeah, and directly because of us, I think one kid died, falling out of a truck or something. There were never, I don't think, any lawsuits. But there was just the fear of lawsuits. Senator Joe Lieberman really campaigned behind the outrage, and So what happened was MTV started really being fearful, really limiting what they would show and censoring us. Mm-hmm. And Knoxville
wouldn't have it.
He just said, no, I'm not doing a watered down version of this. You guys can right off, I quit. And that left the rest of us, what do you mean you quit? But he knew what he was doing all along. He wanted, he didn't want basic cable television money. He wanted box office movie money. And so he saw it as a way to make a movie. He said I don't know how it went on behind closed doors, but the idea was, well, if you guys are so worried about kids getting hurt, make a movie with an R rating, and then you've got that protection, because kids can't see it. So then we can be even crazier, and then we can have a movie So he would have just got a movie deal. It's pretty genius.
And so you end up making a few movies that are like fabulously successful. You know, I know when people have asked you this before, you guys have said it's because you're just getting too old. But I mean, it's kind of bullshit because you guys aren't that old. Why not make another movie given the success of the past one?
I mean, that's a great question. I don't know. I mean, the short answer is that Knoxville is not interested in doing that.
What conversations have you had with him about it?
Well, there's been emails from some of the other guys, particularly one guy who periodically has sent group emails to Knoxville, Spike Jones, Tremaine, the whole cast, saying, you know, come on guys, let's make another movie. Everybody wants it. You know, like, I get asked every day, are we gonna make another movie? And Knoxville responded to the last one with, I get asked every day if we're gonna make another movie as well, but I would rather people ask for another movie than why did you make that last movie? You know, he wanted to sort of keep the legacy intact, and I can't really argue with it.
What do you think the likelihood is it ever happens?
I would say it's not.
I want to go back to Johnny Knoxville momentarily. What do you think he meant to Jackass?
Without him, we wouldn't have gotten anywhere. You know, like his shocking good looks, I think that's fair to say. Like, women were shocked by how attractive he was. Like, as the face of it, he really had this incredible star quality, and like just his whole, I don't know, his talent, his on-camera wit, his charisma, his looks, and his insanity. You can't take away from Knoxville that he's absolutely the craziest one of all of us.
What about to you personally?
Well, I just always, you know, have referred to him as the captain. You know, like I attribute my success to his success largely. I look at him in a lot of ways as like somewhere between a big brother and a father figure.
Really?
Kind of, yeah, really, like the approval, the praise of Knoxville is paramount. And he doesn't mince words with me. He doesn't sugarcoat anything. Like, I'll share with him, you know, every and any project that I'm working on to get notes and feedback from him. He has never failed to really like give it his full undivided attention and like laboriously give me thoughtful feedback. And that just means the world to me.
I want to run through some of your notable stunts over the years and just get you to recall what you remember from each one. Piercing your cheek with the fish hook.
We did it twice, that piercing thing. The first time was a professional body piercer doing it. So there's Pontius and me and this body piercer guy.
Right. The second time you did it yourself.
Well, the second time Pontius helped me with it. It was mostly, yeah, I think I got it started and Pontius muscled it through. It was, yeah, it was 2006 and we were shooting Jackass #2 and I injured my back getting thrown downstairs on a bellhop cart. And I was unable to participate in a lot of the bits. And so this shark thing was really important to me. Everyone else was getting all this great stuff, and I had like next to nothing. And so yeah, we put the hook through my face again, and we cast me out. And this time, a mako shark was coming for me, and so I'm I jerk, and in that sort of jerking motion, I accidentally kicked a mako shark in the face, which I suppose saved my foot.
What about leeches on the eyes?
Knoxville was mad at me because I proverbially tapped out too soon. He wanted to see it go on for longer.
Oh, he's on my eyeball. Hey, wait.
But the thing
It looked pretty brutal when it was.
It was great. Yeah, it was great. But what was interesting about the leech on the eye thing was that I don't think the leech was nearly as painful or uncomfortable as just keeping your eye open for a long time. I mean, you get to a certain point with your eye open, you got to blink that thing.
Right.
And I think what I was up against on the leech bit was just the duration of having my eye open, far more than the leech itself.
Okay.
What about walking over the tightrope over an alligator pond with raw chicken in your underwear?
I was under the impression that my job that day was to get bitten by an alligator.
What do you mean you were under the impression?
I just figured, like, okay, we're gonna do, tightrope over alligators. Like, to me, that just kind of like meant, okay, I'm getting bit by an alligator. I kind of thought that was the thing, and so, like, what a treat that got to be, like, arguably an iconic Jackass moment, and I didn't get hurt at all.
The longest you've ever been electrocuted before would be what?
The interesting part about that was that when you see the police shoot someone with a taser, they're in control of it, and it goes for 5 seconds, and at the police discretion, they can hit you with another 5 seconds. But the civilian version of the taser is designed so that you can shoot your assailant and drop it and run. And so the civilian version, you hit and it just keeps going for 30 seconds. It gives you 30 seconds to run. And when I brought up the idea of getting tased for my first comedy special, I was told, I've got good news and I've got bad news. The good news is I have a taser. The bad news is I've got the 30-second version. But I was concerned that now 30 seconds is just going to kind of get boring. 30 seconds is a pretty long time.
Right.
So we did a 30-second Q&A. My buddy dressed up as like a TV show host, like in a suit, and he came out and he did like a lightning round of questions, like while I was the lightning round, like what's your name? So that made it really funny.
The porta potty slingshot.
I have this like super irrational fear of roller coasters and bungee jumping and certainly skydiving. And so, like, if anybody was going to get in a porta potty and be catapulted, like, with bungee cords, like, up into the sky, like, I'm the one that's going to react the most. Mm-hmm. Like, having just gotten sober, like, I felt really strongly that I've survived enough at this point in my life that, like, dying over a stunt would be disappointing. Like, death and paralysis were, like, off the table for me. But anything else, I'm in. And with the 5-point harness, the bungee porta potty was like, safe and sure. Probably the poo was more dangerous than anything. And OSHA determined that you can't be covered in human poo, but they were okay with dog poo. And somehow there's a company, I think in Los Angeles, that will sell you as much dog poo as you want. And so they bought enough dog poo to fill a porta potty, and that's what it was. It was dog. Pretty classic. Maybe
this is less of a stunt. Scuba diving on a cocaine bender.
Oh, I got Scuba certified on a cocaine bender. Like, there's nothing legal or that should be legitimate about my Scuba certification. It's supposed to happen over a course of so many days. I think we crammed it into a 3-day period, which invalidates it. And on top of that, I did not sleep for that entire 3-day period. I just kept doing drugs the whole time. I remember, like, little to nothing about, whatever the mechanics of Scuba. I don't like, I should not be certified.
Didn't you almost get yourself into, like, real trouble?
The closest I've ever come to death, like actual death, I think, was scuba diving. We were somewhere, and I can't remember what part of the world, maybe I don't know. We're some part of the world, and we're getting ready to scuba dive with sharks. I heard them say the sharks were at the bottom, so I just go to the bottom. I keep going to the bottom, and I don't know if I was coming up or down, but at one point someone grabs my fin, and you know, like, I don't know what's going on, and when we get up, they're screaming at me, you know, you motherfucker, you almost died, and I almost died trying to save you because I was doing it wrong. You know, like, you can't go down too fast or something. And I was like, dude, they said the sharks were on the bottom. That's all I was, you know. So yeah, it's up. And like, I continue to be able to scuba dive. Like, I don't know if I'm in the system, but but yeah, like I continue to be able to scuba dive, and I should not.
How do you get the idea to staple your scrotum to your leg?
When I worked on cruise ships, we would do a weekly report. As we typed the report, this clown sitting next to me didn't really have anything to do, and you know, I'm typing, and he just kind of got bored, or you know, he grabbed a stapler and just. And he banged a staple into his arm. And I was just like, oh my God, that's the coolest thing ever. You know? And we got paid in cash every 2 weeks. So the next time we got paid, I filmed a bit called The $1,000 Man. And it was $100 bills. And I did like one here, like all the way up, like across, you know. Pop, pop, pop. And, you know, I had money stapled all over. It was great. And I went into my own Too Hot for TV tour, like very early days. And that was part of my thing. I'd have chicks throw their bras or panties on the stage, and I would pick them up and staple them. I'd be the bra and panty Christmas tree. At one point, before the bra and panty bit was part of the tour, they just didn't have an office stapler. All they had was a staple gun. And I was like, oh, you know, like, all right, you know. And so now I'm pumping in. And it might have been that night or right around that time. As soon as I'm doing it with a staple gun, I'm going to staple my ball sack to my leg. Like, that's going to make me a legend. It's sort of like kind of crazy to say, oh, well, you know, that made me a legend. But like, you know, arguably, like what I'm known for is I'm the guy who stapled. It's like one of the things. What do you remember from the first time of actually doing it? I remember it not being, no, it was awful. Yeah, I was going to say it wasn't as bad as I thought, but it was awful. As I recall, I thought that actually stapling my ball sack to my leg in and of itself might come off as like just sort of disturbing and upsetting. And I wanted it to be hilarious. So I came up with the idea, okay, I'm going to staple my ball sack to both of my legs, and I'm going to call it the butterfly. Right? And that kind of lightens the load. It makes it more light and funny. So now it's an experiment to see if it looks like a butterfly, which it didn't. It did not. And it made the footage that much better because I had done the one side, and now I still have to do the other side. So there was this hectic kind of pandemonium about it all. And yeah, it didn't look like a butterfly at all. How'd you get arrested? It looked a little bit like, well, it just looked like a dead bat.
Wait, so how'd you get arrested for it?
One night in Louisiana, I had a show, and there was there's a lot of crowd participation in those early tours. So I'd, just improvising, I said, wow, these bouncers are great. Who wants to get on stage and try to run across the stage past the bouncers? It's called British Bulldog. And there was this kid who jumped up and down. I mean, he was just like, he was jumping. My attention went to this kid. He wanted it so bad. And I was like, get on up here. Come on, this kid's gonna try and run past these bouncers. They're gonna him up. And I'm filming it. The kid, like, I go, 1, 2, 3, go. The kid, like, runs. It was so anticlimactic. He just didn't get it anywhere. They just grabbed him. And as, like, almost an afterthought, both of these bouncers hoisted the kid up above their heads and then slammed him on the stage, like, on his head. And he's just like knocked out and twitching. I think there was like a report that he was bleeding out of one of his ears. And he was like, and they're like, call the ambulance. Like the kid's just like not okay. You know, he's not okay. Like it was pretty awful and dark. And there was somebody in the audience who had a home video camera and was taping the whole show. And they felt pretty strongly that what they had documented with that camera constituted a crime, or at least a story. They gave the video to the newspaper. The newspaper said, no, we got to give this to the cops. And you know, by this point, I'm back home in LA, expecting to hear about it at some point. Mm-hmm. But the cops showed up and they arrested me. I landed on the fugitive warrant, like top of the list, because I had 2 charges. One was for principal to second-degree battery for orchestrating the thing where the kid got hurt by the bouncers. And the second charge was for felony obscenity, because during the same performance, I got naked and stapled my ball sack to my leg. I was covered in blood because of the whole, you know, cut my tongue act with the broken light bulb. And I mean, it was just a pretty, like, grisly looking scene. As I went to staple my ball sack that night, I said, this is not art. This is strictly to be offensive. I mean, mind you, it was art. Okay, it was totally art. But yeah, so my bail for the battery charge was set at $120,000. My bail for the obscenity charge was set at $1 million. So I landed on the fugitive list with $1.12 million bail, which made me like the top priority. So they just came in and got me and locked me up in jail. Explain why you're concerned about testicular cancer. I heard that getting kicked in the balls a lot, like a lot of trauma to your testicles, increases your chances for testicular cancer. So once I heard that, I decided to be like, I mean, I guess I was always pretty selective, but it's got to be like a really special occasion if I'm going to take a nut shot. You know, I'm just closing the door on nut shots by going through with the vasectomy Olympics. What happened there? That was, I got a vasectomy. I'll tell you what, I heard a joke when I was a little kid. What's the definition of macho? A man who jogs home from his own vasectomy. And like from when I was a little kid, like I want to be macho, you know. And I like it just was in my mind, like as like a stunt. So yeah, that's the oldest idea on my bucket list. How'd it go? It was a spectacular success. Like thank God, like it wasn't just a bunch of crazy stuff happened, but there was like the payoff, that like the visual shot of like 2 days later, and like it's just you're looking at a plum. My ball sack is just like it's like a plum, and you know, just filled with blood and just totally glorious. How concerned are you about head trauma? Head trauma, I like it's in the news, you know, like the CTE stuff, and I can count 5 times where I was hit in the head hard enough to actually like black out, you know, like to like lose a moment in time. And that's concerning to me. I mean, especially where the one time I landed on my face on concrete off a 2nd floor balcony. It was just like, you know, and then with my tour, like I would hit myself in the head so much. With what? Well, every time I came on stage was with a case of beer to Slayer, and like when the tune broke, I'd be like boom, 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 smashing beer cans until they exploded on my head. And I would do 2 at the same time, and every night, like while I'm throwing out beers. And I stopped doing that because in the morning I'd like wake up and I would be like so dizzy. I'd be like trying to walk to the bathroom and I'd be going diagonally. Oh, you would? Yeah, like it was, it was alarming. And so that, you know, and just always just being hit in the head, you know, like quite a bit. makes me concerned.
Do you feel like the injuries you sustained over the years are impacting you in some way today?
I've been fortunate for the most part. Recently, I went in to have my brain scanned at a place called Peak Brain Institute, and they did all this stuff. And their professional opinion was that my brain was far less damaged than they'd imagined it would be. And that more than the injury, residual injury to my brain, what stood out to them was long-term drug and alcohol abuse. And it's interesting too, because I've always said that, I don't know what's been more dangerous for me, my professional life or my personal life, because they were both at times like very dangerous.
What's the esophagus condition you've spoken about before?
That's I don't even know what. I think it's just from acid reflux, but all of the barfing that I would do in my professional and my personal life, all the drugs, the smoking, like I don't know, but I have an erosion of the esophagus. It's called Barrett's esophagus, and it's concerning because it's like one of the things that happens before esophageal cancer. So it's something that I take pretty seriously and monitor pretty closely.
Why did you think you had sex addiction?
When I got to my late 30s and I was sort of knocking on the door of 40, and I was on this comedy tour and, like hooking up with random chicks all the time, like it really occurred to me that is not the path to like happiness. And, I thought I want to be happy, I want to have a good life, and I subscribe to the belief that means I need to learn to have a healthy relationship so that I can have a life partner. And I resolved to stop hooking up with random chicks on the road. And when I made that promise to myself, I was unable to keep it. And so therein is sort of the definition of addiction. I didn't want to do it, and I couldn't stop myself from doing it. So I got a therapist, and I took it super, super seriousseriously, like just the same way I did with drugs and alcohol.
How much did it help?
It helped a ton. And like here, I'm a guy who doesn't know moderation. So when I got in that, when I was in that intensive program, which was in October of 2013. 2013 was a crazy year. 2013 was the year Knoxville was filming the Bad Grandpa movie the whole time. Mm-hmm. And to me, and I think I can speak for the rest of the guys in the Jackass cast, like it was like, wait, hold on a second, it's a Jackass movie, but we're not in it? Like, it was like, there was like Knoxville went solo, like with Jackass, like now we have to figure out what it's like to be the Jackson 4. Like it was like this, like, I just didn't understand it, and it was scary, and I was in a really dark place. And at
you were?
Oh yeah.
Because of that? That
was really, really like upsetting to me. Like I just went into like a dark place, and
this is post rehab, and like you've been clean for a while, and
right.
Yeah.
I got sober in 2008, mm-hmm. and I'm talking about 2013. Right. So on top of that, I had this show that I hosted on True TV, where we would do terrible things to people while they were singing karaoke, and that was like kind of funny. But a lot of the things involved animals, and I wasn't comfortable with what was happening. So as we went into the second season, I said, "Hey guys, I'm not cool with the animal stuff." And so they were like, "Oh, okay, that's great. You're fired." Basically, I just found out that they went with another host. Mm-hmm. So in that year, 2013, I felt, from my looking at it, that I had been fired essentially from Jackass and from the only gig that I had going. Like I felt like I lost everything, and like here's this, like just doomsday gloom, dark place, and I was acting out sexually a lot on the comedy tour and the whole deal, and I ended up going into that that intensive sex therapy program, making sure that I was tied up doing that when the premiere for the Bad Grandpa movie happened, because it just hurt too much to even think about being at that premiere. So I was doing that, and I come out of this sex program. They recommend a period of celibacy when you start out in recovery with the sex stuff, because it's supposed to kind of reprogram your brain somehow. So I decided I'm gonna go for a whole year.
What do they recommend?
I still don't even remember why I kept going after a full year, but I went 461 days. And they don't recommend anything like it's very case by case.
Okay.
There's not one thing that they recommend for everybody. But for me, it was recommended that I be celibate, I think, for a year.
Wow.
I went for a year and 3 months, which at the end of the day I think was like just sort of sexual anorexia. I don't know that there's anything healthy about that approach in hindsight. And I came out of that, and then I got into this relationship with someone who lived in England that was just not gonna work. And then I got out of that relationship, and I got in another relationship that was not gonna work. And then I was at a point thinking, like, and I just went off the rails again, like sexually. And I think it's kind of like where, if you've been sober, like from drugs and alcohol, and then you relapse, you kind of can't enjoy it, or like it just gets really bad really fast. And then I think in the long run, that was the most helpful thing for me, because then I was just like really ready, and that was back in 2016, and then 2017 I met my girl, and now here I am with like really meaningful time under my belt from both drugs and alcohol and any kind of inappropriate sexual behavior, and I'm just in trouble with food.
With food?
Yeah, which is like, it sucks.
Like how so?
Like, I'm just like powerless, man, and it's crazy. Like, I act out with food. Candy. I mean, you can ask my girl. Like, it's like pathetic. Like some of the food choices that like just like, and where like.
Like binge eating? Or?
Like binge eating, like just binge eating, like candy, donuts, like, it's awful. And to look at me, you wouldn't think that that's the case, but like genetically I somehow get away with it to a degree. But here's the pisser, is that when I went to go do the mountain climbing show in Peru, I had a physical to clear me for the job.
Right.
And the doctor called me back and said, dude, you have pre-diabetes. And to me, that is the most like humiliating possible concept, where I've been this like be veggie, animal rights, like eating meat causes diabetes.
Yeah.
So for me to turn around and get diabetes would like make me a really embarrassed dude. And like he's like, you gotta like exercise more, and you've gotta like knock it off with all the bread and the sugar, because you're on track to get diabetes. And in the face of that news, I can't put down the Reese's.
You can't?
Well, like now I'm on this like whole thing with, my food diary and all that. So, but it's not the first time. And I just like, I really am like, I don't know, I've really got my fingers crossed for the day when I can feel like the food behavior is, under control like the other things.
Mike Tyson, what happened when you ran into him in the Hollywood Hills?
That night we were at a nightclub first, and then everybody was going to this after party, and I kind of found out where it was and invited myself along, and like showed up and banged on the door, and Mike Tyson opened it, and I was like, like, hey, is it cool if I come in? And I remember he like swung his fist like past me and like hit me in the back of the head, knocking me like, get in here, you know, like yeah, get in here. And then he's like, you got any Coke? And I was like, yeah, dude, I have a lot. You know? I remember having like half an 8-ball in one pocket and like an untouched 8-ball in the other pocket, like which was more than I would usually have. And so yeah, we locked ourselves in this bathroom and
just you and Mike Tyson.
Just me and Mike Tyson. And the year was I believe 2005. And we went through all of it. Him smoking it. He took his cigarette. Like initially, I'd never seen anything like this, you know? Like he took a cigarette, asked me for a cigarette, and he rolled it back and forth between his fingers so that all the tobacco like fell out, and it just left like a hollow like cylinder of cigarette paper attached to the filter. So he started just scooping just powder cocaine into this hollow cigarette, and like just kept filling it up and packing it down and filling it up. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking like, just purely logistically, like that can't work. You know, like figure the paper's got to burn faster than, you know, than like pure nothing but cocaine. But I'm just fascinated. I'm just sitting there watching him do it. And then I think he pulled out the filter, like, you know, whatever, just made it work. And then he made it work. He smoked the whole thing. And I was just like generally fascinated, and I just let him just keep doing it, and I'm snorting it, and he's smoking it, and until it was all gone.
What are you guys talking about?
We were in that bathroom for hours, like hours and hours. And before we parted ways, he said, you know, Steve, everybody's got you wrong. You're a really smart guy. And then I just thought like, wow, like Mike Tyson just told me I'm smart.
How did the two of you then later wind up locked up together in a psych ward?
By pure coincidence. In 2008, I was locked up in a psychiatric ward, and lo and behold, Mike Tyson showed up as a patient. And this time I pitched to him that I wanted to have him hold his fist out and me run into his fist with my face and try to give myself a black eye. And he politely declined. What
did he say?
He said, I don't want to hurt you, Steve.
I think you had your first drink at 12. You started...
No, I didn't have my first drink. I had my first drink before 12, and I'm guessing that it was my parents who gave it to me. I mean, my mom was, of course, an alcoholic, and along with that is, you know, sort of hypersensitivity and, you know, overly concerned with the opinions of others. And when I was a baby, Mom was like not comfortable with me crying on an airplane. She didn't want to be like that, you know, with the loud baby on the airplane. And so she would give me booze.
You serious?
I think so, yeah. Like when I was like pretty young, like, I mean, we could check with my dad or my sister, but I don't think anybody ever disputed that. I mean, not a lot of booze, but just a little bit, just, you know, a little bit of booze.
To what?
To make me not cry. Okay. On the plane. But then I think before I was 12, it was like a family tradition kind of a thing that on New Year's, the kids could have one alcoholic beverage. And I think I remember having alcohol on New Year's Eve when I was like 8 or 9. You know, I would have like a beer or something, you know. I think the idea was if you let the kids have that, it's not like, I mean, whatever they were going to do, it was going to blow up in their faces. So I don't fault anybody for anything they did in trying to manage me as a child.
Name all the drugs you can remember doing over the years.
My favorites were ketamine, cocaine, nitrous oxide, PCP, of course marijuana, alcohol. Oh, I loved Xanax so much, and Valium. got too into meth, but I never turned it down. Had some pretty terrible experiences on magic mushrooms. But I had a lot of great experience on LSD. And like random weird stuff, I huffed video head cleaner. There was like a weird like episode where I was drinking like aluminum cleaner, some weird thing, and that would bring about some pretty disturbing incidents.
Tell about going to your HIV positive drug dealer's house when he didn't answer his phone.
I had this drug dealer, he lived very close by. I had him in my phone as his first name and then everything, like as a pseudo last name. He says, I got everything. And so I would go over to everything's house. If he didn't answer my call, I would just be like, well, he lives close, and so if he doesn't pick up, we'll just go over there and show up. Sometimes I would show up and, he'd be there and, sell me my drugs. And sometimes I would show up and the door would be locked and it was like, and then there were sometimes where I'd show up and the door would be unlocked, but he would be like passed out because he was very much a drug user as well as a dealer. And he would inject cocaine, which like for some reason means that with his syringe, he squirted his blood. You could see his blood squirted over the walls, even on the ceiling. I guess there's just some component to injecting cocaine that leads you to squirt your own blood all over the place. But this one time when I showed up and he was in his bedroom passed out, he wasn't dead, but I couldn't wake him up. And I was like, hey, wake up. And I just finally reached a point where I came to stop trying to wake him up, but I'm in his house. And over at the table where he would weigh out all of his drugs, there was a very noticeable residue of cocaine that, just from the volume of cocaine that had been over through this table, there was a residue of it. And so I went over to the table to scrape up a pile of cocaine to snort it. But as I had sat down looking at it, there was, of course, blood had been squirted. Like there were you could see the little tiny little blood splatter, on the residue. And this is how just desperate and pathetic my addiction was, that I sat there knowingly scraping up this tainted blood cocaine, and I sat there and snorted it, which is so I snorted the blood of an intravenous drug user. I can't that's the extent.
What was your reaction when you found out he was HIV positive?
At that point, I had already been through, I'd had the HIV test so many times over and over, and it's all these years later, and I just don't have it. Fortunately, that when blood dries, or when it's, the AIDS doesn't live for very long.
Explain why you used to like to get high to the point of hearing voices.
Well, because it was cool. Hearing voices was awesome. To me, they were otherworldly entities that were very real, that only I was privy to communication with. And it's interesting that whether it's with meth or in my case with nitrous oxide and cocaine, I think that psychosis, which is characterized by audio hallucinations, hearing voices, various hallucinations, seems to be, from what I understand, fairly uniform across the board. So I have the theory that if you ingest enough drugs, that what you do is essentially erode the barriers between other dimensions and stuff.
What would the voices say?
There were nice things that some voices would say, and there were mean things. So I would categorize them as angels and demons.
And what were the angels and demons saying?
Well, there were angels, there were demons, and then there were tricksters. very distinct categories. The tricksters would just put on shows, and all of a sudden, like, my apartment, like, the whole place would just have like lights just like going off, like lights that were never there, and like the curtains would be opening and closing, like, you know, on their own, like, where meanwhile there's like barriers that it's not possible that can happen. I had this skateboard with a globe that was drilled to it. The base of the globe was drilled to the skateboard, and then the skateboard was drilled to the wall above the door to the apartment. And so it's this, you know, globe that's coming out like this. And I was looking at it at one point, and the like the liquid Terminator kind of deal, like the globe, my face came pushing out like the liquid Terminator, and it's my face, and then the globe starts like headbanging. Like, it was me up there headbanging. There was another time when I was sitting in this big swiveling chair, and the whole thing just straight went up in flames with me sitting in it, like full fire. I was surrounded, the whole chair was completely on fire, and I wasn't being burned by it. It was just like, wow, you know? And it was, to me, like, it was like legit, like trickster spirits that were just entertaining me. You know, and ultimately, like, I suppose I would now categorize them as demons, because they made me want so much to keep these experiences happening. And so that just drove the addiction, and I just consumed more and more and more.
And what were the angels doing?
They were expressing concern for me that they wanted me to not destroy myself. And
how would they do that?
They would plead with me to they would say that we're worried about you, you know, like, we want you to not die and such. I would hallucinate essentially interventions. At one point, all these, like, people, there's regular for people to be walking around my apartment that were never physically there. They were like purely, you know, I was hallucinating, and it was like very real too. And at one point, I was sitting there in that same chair that went up in flames, and I had all this cocaine and all this nitrous oxide, and I was, you know, just like days into it. And I leaned over to do like another line of cocaine, and I just thought, you know, like, I'm killing myself. Like, you know, like, there's no longevity in what I'm doing. Like, this is just full-blown self-destruction at this point, you know, like, I'm dying. And I remember thinking, like, in that moment, I thought the very precise, distinct words. I thought, I don't care if I die. And then I leaned in to do the line of cocaine, and all in that moment, I don't care if I die. And I leaned forward, and that same chair, like, it was like it turned into a mechanical bull. You know, like some like super strong man was just like, you know, and the message to me was like so crystal clear. And it was just like, think again, like, stop, like, no, like, not okay. You know, it is not okay for you to think, I don't care if you die. You need to care that you don't die. You know, like, now, and I'm super clear as well that if there was like a surveillance camera inside the apartment, like, now, you know, this was purely my own.
Right.
You know, like, it was a tactile hallucination, but it was full body and that. Now, when I got to rehab, I should say, because there's another one that was impactful. I had a shoe sponsor at that time, and this whole wall of the apartment had vertical shelves and horizontal shelves, so there were cubby holes. And in every single cubby hole was a different pair of shoes, you know, from the same company. It was like a whole wall display. And one night, as you know, I would say the angels took over, and I was, you know, being intervened upon. There was a 24-pack of Budweiser that was just moving around the floor, like indicating that it was like a camera, like reporting what I was up to. And like all of these like inanimate objects were somehow telling me to like throw away the drugs, like, you know, enough is enough, this is it. Like the entire wall of shoes, like, were like impatiently tapping their toes for me to throw away the drugs and stop killing myself. Yeah. Like, all right, you know, the whole wall of shoes was just sitting there impatiently tapping their toes. And then when I got to rehab, and what they're all talking about, you need to have a higher power and like spirituality, you know, like just to get sober. Like this is described as like a prerequisite. And I determined that whatever made that chair spin and those shoes tap would be what I prayed to when, you know, when I need to turn to my higher power. And I still, like, that has not changed, like, not one tiny little bit.
What do you mean?
Like, whatever made that chair spin. This, like here I am, you know, well over 10 years later, and I'm telling you, that chair spun. Those shoes tapped. Like, that's a fact. And like, you know, that experience was a big deal. I mean, I wasn't ready at the time. You know, I didn't like turn around and like, you know, get healthy.
Right.
But that like planted a seed that I like lean into, you know. Like that's something that for me to like, that experience is something for me to grab onto. Like, you know, there's something out there that cares about me.
What do you know about your mom's family history?
As family trees go, every leaf on my mom's family tree is, I think I can pretty safely say, everyone, except for my generation, like my cousins, I don't even think dead or dying even counts anymore. I think they're all dead. I think they all died from alcoholism or suicide. Yeah, like it's f***ing crazy. My dad said at one point that, you know, given my mom's lineage, that it could be said that for me to have children, the odds of my child being an alcoholic are like the odds of playing Russian roulette with a completely loaded weapon. There's no skip a generation, like anywhere. It's everybody.
What do you remember writing in your college essay about your mom in Little League?
I remember it said like you know, like the school bell rang at, you know, 3 p.m. The day was over, and the kid excitedly got on his bike and, you know, biked home, where, you know, he'd laid out his baseball uniform, you know, because he was so excited about the game, you know, and like, and it's true. I was like, I loved that uniform, whatever it was. If it was a baseball uniform, a football uniform, that thing was like important, you know, and a game was important. And
you'd wear it when you didn't even have to.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, I was like uncomfortable in my own skin, and so like there was something about wearing like that baseball uniform that made me like amount to more than like me just on my own, you know, like, so it was a big deal. And I showed up all excited, and I was in 3rd grade. I was 8 years old, and Dad was on a business trip, and Mom was passed out in bed, and I said, Mom, you know, like, it's time to go to the game, you know, like, need her to drive me to the game. And she just wasn't having it, you know. She was all, like, super drunk and just said flat out no, and I couldn't accept that. And so I went over to the neighbor's house, and I asked the lady that lived, you know, next door across the street if she would drive me to the game, and she did.
How often would she drink to the point of being unable to function?
She was a binge drinker, and so there was episodes that would go on, like when she started drinking, like it was like a relapse, and that meant that she would, from that point forward, stay drunk for days or even weeks on end, mostly coinciding with Dad's business trips. So
why coinciding with his business trips?
If Dad was around, like, that wasn't gonna fly. Mm-hmm. But when Dad was not around, so Mom would be trying to pull it together for when Dad got back, like with varying degrees of difficulty.
So when the binge drinking was going on for days or weeks on end, how did that impact you in terms of going to school or eating dinner?
Going to school, like, at times became optional, particularly in high school. There was a lot of freedom, you know, and I kind of welcomed it. But, and man, it's really like, again, I was never like mad at my mom, and I recognized fully that she was just sick, you know, like, you know, I get it. But like the extent of her sickness is pretty crazy. And here I'm just gonna go ahead and say this. But when I was 9 years old, Mom announced to the family that she was dying of lymph node cancer. And it wasn't true. This was just to have an excuse to not get out of bed and stay drunk, which is like the most f***ed up thing.
To what extent did she allow you to do drugs and alcohol?
It would vary. You know, that was kind of a sliding scale. You know, there were at least 1 or 2 times when, like, she would smoke a joint with me, but you know, that just meant that she was really drunk, and I felt awful about even then. Like, I felt awful about that.
Oh, between your mom and then your condition starting to progress, how much do you think your dad was in denial?
Oh God, he was intense. You know, like, Dad, it was so obvious what was going on with Mom, and even with me. And Dad just had this ability to believe that, you know, to just deny it. Yeah, denial. His rose-colored glasses.
Until you and your dad were visiting colleges, and then you came back from visiting college, and that was her condition was like.
Right. That was
end of the line.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, we were gone for like a week, and we came home, and everything was another level. Yeah, and that was when Dad said, "Okay, I'm out of here," you know, and broke the news that he had already been with another woman, and that now he was going to move in with her. And I think Dad could have handled that. You know, in a better way, but at the same time, I never was mad at him, nor did I fault him, because the fact was that Mom's alcoholism made that marriage impossible to continue. You know, I just, like, Dad's not a bad guy because that happened. I mean, the sequence of events could have been cleaner, but again, like, there was no way around that being the case. Like, they weren't going to stay together that way.
You send a 2008 email to your friends that they viewed as suggesting possible suicide. How did they respond?
I said, this is how I scheduled my own intervention. I said that I've been evicted. I've only got, like, you know, got to get out of the apartment. But before I get out of here, I want to ride a motorcycle through the living room and jump out onto the roof of the building next door. And, you know, I don't want to jump out of my bedroom window and land on the sidewalk, but I'd like to land in a hot tub. You know, I'd settle for cardboard boxes. But Knoxville, get over here with the crew and bring me a hot tub or cardboard boxes. And if you don't, I'm gonna jump anyway, just to find out how many bones get broken when I land on concrete from 25 feet up in the air. Like, I'm ready to die, was how I ended that email. And now this email that I sent was to, like, 200 of the most influential people who had the misfortune of me getting a hold of their contact info. And when I proposed that Knoxville come over and bring a hot tub, or, you know, the rest of it, he had already been in contact with Dr. Drew and, you know, various people to organize, you know, this intervention.
What happened when you actually got to the hospital?
I was, like, spitting on people, as I recall. I wanted to smoke a cigarette, and I was screaming and yelling, and I tried to throw some chair or something. I was, like, throwing a temper tantrum and just being, like, generally unlovely. And then they jammed a needle in my butt cheek, and then I took a nap. You know, and I'm knocked out, and then I would, like, you know, when I wake up from my nap, I'm in the part of the hospital where, like, the doors just don't open, and I'm like, I can't get, I'm locked up. Like, it was a cross between a hospital and a jail, You know, it was like a pretty intense situation. And being in that situation, like on the first day, I had like, you know, this internal dialogue where I was kind of calculating like how to handle, like how am I gonna, I wanna get the out of here, you know? But because my behavior had been so like spectacular, they changed my status to what's called 50-250, which is a 2-week hold. And I think it was like maybe the 4th day. This guy, another patient, he said that he was a heroin addict. He gives me this book about alcoholism. But I don't want to read this book because, like, there's no helping me. You know, like, I'm like, there's no hope for me, you know? But then, if it was that night, if it was the next night, I don't know. But I'm just laying in, you know, and I can't sleep, and I'm bored, and there's nothing else better to do, and here's this book, and I just picked it up and started reading the book. And as I read it, like particularly in the beginning, there was this sort of like, you know, like general like assessment of alcoholism. That they were describing that the more hopeless you are, the better, you know. Which makes sense, like as I look at it now. Because if part of you thinks like, oh, like, no, there's hope for me, I can manage it, then you're not a candidate for recovery, you know? Recovery starts with an admission of complete defeat, you know? We admitted that we got our ass kicked and we surrendered, you know? And so what I didn't even realize is that my core belief that I was past the point of help, that I was a lost cause, a write-off, actually made me like a prime candidate. And so it's this paradox that, you know, I'm just kind of fascinated with, but recovery begins by finding hope in hopelessness.
Well, why after 100 days sober have you said before that was the closest you'd ever been to actually killing yourself?
After I got sober, I would say that it took probably about that long, like 3 months for the fog to clear enough for me to see like the reality of like what I had become, you know, and like I just judged myself as like, I hate myself. There was one time in particular where I was at, you know, one of our sober people things, and I spoke up and said, like, all of the work that I'm putting into, you know, my recovery, I feel like what's coming out of this work is self-hatred. You know, as I look at, like, you know, my inventory, as I, like, you know, like go through this stuff that I have to go through, I don't like what I see. You know, I'm ashamed. I feel guilty. I feel, you know, I feel like I hate myself. And I feel like I want to blow my brains out. And this thing that I was at was located on hospital grounds. And so when it was over, the people walked me across the hospital grounds and checked me into. I checked myself into the psychiatric unit.
Why did you end up staying in sober living for 2 years?
I remember a counselor saying some statistic that like 95% of all alcoholics died drunk of causes related directly to alcoholism, is like the general statistic. Like only about 5% of alcoholics achieve long-term sobriety. And I said to Dr. Drew, hey man, like I know the odds are not in my favor, and here I'm all in, and I don't want to waste my time, you know? And so however long you recommend that I stay in this rehab, I want to stay significantly longer so that I can give myself a better chance of not wasting my time doing this. Mm-hmm. And that is just a really crazy thing to do because it's essentially handing over a blank check. Mm-hmm. And this place was like, I don't know how much that had cost me. I think it might have been like something in the like 300 grand, you know, ballpark.
Yeah.
But Dr. Drew, and bless his heart, he said, that's great that you're so committed, but the fact is I don't recommend that you stay in this rehab for more than 30 days. I think that would be pointless. But if you are serious about giving yourself an advantage, then what I recommend you doing is going from rehab into a sober living. And that makes all the sense in the world. And like today, I'm such a big fan of sober living saved my life, is what I think. Because without it, there would have been so many moments where I was just like in the book, it describes, you know, like that moment of subtle insanity. Where just all of a sudden, we just can't think of a reason not to take a drink.
Yeah.
That's what alcoholism is. And then there's no way around it. You're going to have that moment. And that's why it's so important for sober people to stay together, because in a group, not all of us have that moment at the same time.
Yeah.
So we protect each other from that moment. And without being in that safe environment of the sober living on my own, with that moment of subtle insanity, like I'd be a goner. And on top of that, with no discipline whatsoever, such entitlement issues, you know, like just such a child. And like I needed the safety and the structure and the discipline.
Ryan Dunn, why do you think his death really hit home with you?
I mean, I think it hit all of us. I don't know that it hit me, you know, like more than any of the other guys, but yeah, he was just an alcoholic, man. And that was like one of the last things he said to me. I remember because we did, the last time I saw Dunn before he died, we taped this show with Guy Fieri, Minute to Win It. And, you know, it's to raise money for charity, and you do these like little challenges. And they involve like dexterity and like balancing like dice on a, like whatever, like little things. Mm-hmm. And Dunn like had the shakes, you know? He, like in the rehearsal and like before we taped the show, like he had to go, you know, have a couple drinks. And he even said, I'm like, dude, like, what the f-? And he's like, dude, I just gotta not shake, you know, like I'm an alcoholic. So that being the last time I saw him, you know, and spoke to him, and then the next time, like I hear he died.
How did you find out?
Oh God, it was my phone rang at like 5 or 6 in the morning, and I woke up and it was someone from TMZ asking for a comment about Ryan Dunn's death. Which f***ing sucks, you know? I mean, I can't fault that person because they had my number. It was their job to, you know, to do that. It was, I'm not mad at them, you know, for that, but I was at the time. I thought that was pretty disgusting.
What was your reaction?
If I'm completely honest, I was like, a selfish one. I was like, like that means, you know, like what are we gonna do now? You know, how are we gonna turn around? Like it was considerably less than a year since we'd had the huge success with Jackass 3D. You know, I think that if I'm honest, my first thought was like, you went and died on us, man. You know, like that us. You know, and that's like pretty pathetic and sad that, you know, that's my first thing, but I remember it was, you know, and the rest is it's just sad, man, you know. It's just really sad.
How did you cope with it?
I think death in general, like, I can kind of handle it without, like, you know, falling apart. I think, like my mom, that was like super difficult. And my mom suffered, because in 1998, my mom had an aneurysm and, you know, like her brain bleeding, and she survived it, which is, I think, rather rare, but she survived it with terrible mental and physical disability. And on top of that, she got bed sores, which is like the worst thing that I think can happen to a person, just about. And she survived for 5 years in total pain, and like just cried in pain a lot of the time, you know, like really. And like to hear my mom like crying, like so much, and you know, just the suffering, it traumatized me in such a terrible way, and like, you know, with the idea of a higher power and God, like, I mean, I'd really hated any idea of a God that could allow that to happen to my mom, you know. But since I got sober and with, you know, like this sort of pursuit of, you know, spirituality and kind of thinking about like, what's it all about? You know, like that's kind of the thing. And I just view it like as, there's this saying, we're all eyes in the same head. You know, like, all of creation is an exercise in God experiencing itself. So like, viewed it that way, it's not like God was over here and allowed that to happen to my mom, who was over here, and they were separate. Like, no, like mom was, just like we all are, an exercise in experience for God. And so they're very much together and very much the same. And so that like kind of really helps me with that. So I don't know, I think I've just kind of come to terms with that a little bit better. Like I don't think of, I think of Ryan Dunn passing, and I think it's like, it's really sad. You know, that really, if you ask me, there's really, I don't think anybody that would disagree that he died of alcoholism, you know? And you don't have to do that. Like, I've learned that, you know, that there's a solution. So it's sad, and I miss him, and I know all of my buddies miss him.
I think you moved 7 times around the world by the time you were 14. Name all the places you lived when you were growing up.
I grew up in 5 different countries. I was born in England, moved to Brazil when I was 6 months old, spoke my first words in Portuguese, moved to Venezuela when I was, I think, 2, and I spoke fluent Spanish in nursery school. I moved to Connecticut when I was 4, and then when I was 6 years old, moved to Miami, and then when I was 9 years old, moved to England. When I was 12 years old, moved to Canada. When I was 13, I moved back to England. And I stayed in England through all 4 years of high school until I graduated high school when I was 18.
The pros and cons of moving around like that would be what?
Every time I found out we were going to move, I was like psyched about it. Because I was like, oh, well, this next time I'm going to be cool, you know? Like, it was always like a chance for me to start over because I was really quick to rub people the wrong way, like all through my childhood. And like I wanted like attention and I wanted approval and praise, but like I went all the wrong ways about trying to get that.
How well, if all, do you remember the report card from your 6th grade homeroom teacher?
It was the 6th grade report card, and my homeroom teacher, Alice Iaquesa, wrote, Steve, like desperately craves the approval, you know, the attention, approval, you know, praise, whatever, you know, of his peers, but everything he does, you know, in seeking that brings about the opposite result. And that couldn't be more accurate. And the fact of how true that is was you know, it pierced me.
So your dad, how much did he work when you were growing up?
Oh, yeah, I mean, like, I think if anything was damaging, and this isn't like an attack or a judgment on my dad, but I think that the lack of consistency with the parenting, you know, when Dad was around, there was like, Dad would try to like compensate for all the time he wasn't there by being extra like stern and, you know, disciplinarian when he was there. And so all that like really created was just like inconsistency, you know, like, oh, like what is it, you know, and same thing with Mom's drinking and stuff. So, I either had like a super strict like dad that I was kind of scared of, or like I had just like, it was like Pippi Longstocking, you know?
So it was a lunch that you had with him at Ruby Tuesdays before the two of you drove to Jackson Memorial to see your mom after her aneurysm. What about that lunch was so impactful?
Yeah, when mom's aneurysm happened and, you know, we all congregated in Florida, we took a break from the hospital to go get this meal. At that point, I had been through clown college, which Dad just didn't understand, he didn't approve of, he just didn't support. And Mom came to my clown college graduation, but Dad did not, which is no big deal, you know. But Dad was like not on board with what I was trying to do with the video camera and the I'm gonna be a stuntman business. And I love this so much. This is so like special to me, and I'm so grateful for it because Dad initiated this conversation at that time, and he said, hey, I want to tell you something. I really feel I've done a disservice to you by not supporting you in this career that you've clearly committed yourself to. And it's not what I would choose for you, but I didn't choose what my dad would have chosen for me. And he said, just like my dad told me, he said that, you know, I want to tell you that, you know, I regret not supporting you and I pledge to support you. And that just, like, it was a big deal, you know? He said, you're not doing what I want.
How did hearing that impact you?
Like, it put wind in my sails, you know? And I remember, like, there was this show on TV called Real TV, where it was kind of like, you know, it was home videos. And on the commercial, they said, if you have any video footage that you think that, you know, we might want to see, like, call this number. And I called up the number, and I was like, I don't even have footage that you might want. I have footage that you desperately need, you know, and so I sent them the video, and they called me back, and they said, yeah, we really like the one where you're on the roof of the 3-story building and you set yourself on fire and do the simultaneous fire-breathing front flip off of the roof. And we'll pay you $500 for exclusive rights to it. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? And they said, well, that means that we own it and that you can't, you know, do anything with it. I'm like, wait, like, I can't do it. I'm thinking that sounds awful. Right. And so I kind of went into a panic because I wanted to be on real TV. You know, like I want to be on real TV, but I don't want, you know. And so I called Dad, you know, and I couldn't have done that before. Now Dad's on my team. He's in my corner. Yeah. And I called Dad and I said, Dad, you know, 500 exclusives. And Dad says, calm down, you know, mellow out, calm down. He said, this is so simple. He said, you need to decide what's a deal breaker and stick to it. He says, what I hear you saying, it sounds like the exclusivity is a deal breaker. So why don't you draw that line, stick to it, tell them that you're not going to give them exclusivity, and ask for 1,000. So I called back and I said, non-exclusive, and I need 1,000. And they said, cool. And so like from that first, you know, that was like the first like business thing. And Dad and I did it together. He's been in the loop on everything. I mean, increasingly less so. But he still has a major presence in all of my affairs. You know, and I love that.
Tell me about all your tattoos.
All right, this is the fat mud flap lady. There's nothing really deep about it. Okay. This is my Bloods and Crips tattoo. Okay. This is the logo on the Grindr app. Which I just got. It's my most recent one.
Well, and the reasoning for that was what?
It's just funny, like to be funny. Here's Santa Claus crucified on the cross. There's the famous off-road tattoo. Angelina Jolie's same Billy Bob tattoo.
Wait, Angelina Jolie's what?
Billy Bob tattoo.
Oh, the one she has.
Yeah, she had it removed, but no, I'm sticking with it.
Did you get your knuckles removed?
I did. I got the knuckles lasered off.
Why?
just, I had this men's group, a therapy group. I went every Monday night. And all like successful guys, like thoughtful guys, it was this, like, they were just getting to know me. And they're like, what's up with the tattooed on your knuckles? And I told them this crazy story about how it came about and how my mom was dying, and like I showed up and they'd just gotten them, and it was my mom read and she giggled, and it was the last time she ever laughed, and that's why these tattoos were special to me, and I'd got it because to be like so crazy. And these guys said, one of them said something really thoughtful, that it just goes to show you can never really make your own conclusions based on something you see. Because here you just told this like wonderful, beautiful story about your mom. And like where I was looking at your knuckles, I just thought, man, it's so sad how angry and hurt someone would have to be to get those tattoos on their knuckles. And I just thought, wow, like I never wanted to create the impression that, I was like, here I just, like, these guys are bummed out. Like, I don't want to bum people out. Like,
yeah.
And I just sort of thought of it more, and I decided that whoever I was trying to impress with tattoos on my knuckles, like, they didn't care.
Yeah.
It kind of outlived its usefulness. When people ask me what's my favorite tattoo, I kind of just say the one on my back because it's iconic, but truthfully, my favorite tattoo would be the on my knuckles, which I got removed.
What? Because of the story?
Because of the story, the fact that it made my mom laugh, at such a dark time. Mm-hmm. And what an intense point of pride it is for me that I just waltzed through life for over 10 years with and tattooed on my knuckles, and it never got in my way. It never served as an obstacle. Like, for most people, that would be a real obstacle. And nobody ever, it never got, like, granted, to be on TV, I would have to, cover it up. I would change the words with a marker, but I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And I just skated through life with full-blown profanity tattooed on my knuckles.
So Lex and I were talking about this a bit yesterday, but how did you guys meet?
We met on a job. She works in production design, set design, prop styling, wardrobe, and I was hired to do a job which never ended up seeing the light of day, but I still got paid and I met her.
But I asked him out.
So we went on a few dates. We did things pretty responsibly and conventionally.
Well, yeah, she said you guys never kissed before you moved in together.
Well,
the day of our first kiss, we essentially moved in together.
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
that's how I joked about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
We took a whole month of dating and no physical action, which was
But yeah, this first kiss, and then we kissed each other's pee-pees, and we lived together ever since.
Oh, there you go. All right, so we're here at the Gentle Barn. You guys obviously want to build your own animal sanctuary. How did the idea for it come about?
I was in Morocco with my buddy Scott Randolph, and I was like, man, I feel like I'm getting some traction again in my career. I feel like things are going well. I already have more than I need. Lex and I don't want kids.
And why not, by the way?
Can you imagine?
How long is this interview?
Well, because, and Lex and I were talking about this yesterday, your dad, Ted, said to me, like, I wonder if they're, putting forth the passion that people would have towards kids of their own, towards animals. But he said you guys have talked about that a lot, and he's tried to convince you otherwise, and has since given up on that.
Right.
Yeah.
It was, I want to say about 15 years ago, I said to my dad, Dad, I got this great idea, the vasectomy Olympics, I'm gonna, and he didn't even get that far, and he just became super serious and concerned. He said, don't do it. If it weren't for you and your sister, my life wouldn't be as enriched. And I'm like, Dad, you got kind of lucky with me, You're pretty close to it all being a terrible heartbreak. But yeah, he feels strongly about that later in life having children, is important. And
I think most people feel that way, but I just can't relate to that. I've never wanted kids. I've never had that desire.
Wanted any kids, let alone one like me. That sounds awful.
That's what your dad said. He like wondered if you thought that if you ended up with one like you, that you just didn't want to deal with how much of a handful.
The karma of that.
Right, and it was my dad who said that, based on the lineage, particularly my mom's side of the family, with alcoholism and drug abuse, and he said that these problems for me having children would be like playing Russian roulette with a loaded gun, like a completely loaded gun. Like I'm definitely gonna end up with like really problematic offspring, I think.
Not to mention, the huge commitment having kids is financially, probably the most expensive thing you'll ever do. And I have, a lot planned for myself, and none of that has ever included kids. And I don't know, I feel like if I ever got to the point of feeling like I actually wanted to like take care of another human,
adopt.
Yeah, adopt or foster.
Right. There's enough people in need.
Right.
Like, why create more need?
Yeah, this planet's a little overpopulated already, and so in a way there is some selfishness to it, and in a way there is some, humanity to it.
So you were in Morocco.
Right, I was in Morocco, and I said to my buddy Scott, I was like, man, I think I feel things starting to, work out, kind of, I feel like my career is getting momentum, and Lux and I don't want to have kids, and I already have like everything that I need. I think and it was Scott that said you should open up an animal sanctuary, and like my head exploded. I just got so excited.
What was your reaction when he brought it up to you?
I was thrilled. I've always wanted to have a ranch as a retirement plan, which isn't necessarily a retirement plan, but the idea of having that before I even retire is, that's a dream. So I'm thrilled.
Perfect world, what would be the plan for the ranch or the sanctuary?
We want to have it in Southern California so we can drive to it. We also want the zoning to allow for it to have a bed and breakfast so that we can make it kind of a destination, come and hang out. Like, we want to have like go-kart tracks for kids and stuff like this. So that the traffic can bring in revenue to run the place, and that while the people are there, that they can have a meaningful encounter with an animal or a bunch of animals, so that as they look into that animal's eyes, they can maybe wonder, what am I doing eating this thing? Like maybe like they can start thinking that way a little bit. And ultimately in success, I want to expand and the bed and breakfast piece, turn it into a home for people with special needs. Particularly because my nephew has both Down syndrome and autism, and my sister, who's a single parent, has bestowed on me the responsibility of becoming the legal guardian for her kids if anything happens to her. When she first told me that, I freaked out, and I agreed to it, but I freaked out. And I think she's under a lot of stress with her career. And, Dylan is at his size and an age that daycares won't accept him. He loves breaking things. So my sister's forced to work from home, and her whole career, I think, is tenuous. So if our ranch became a nonprofit and my sister was in charge of the administration, that could solve her career issues. And if with the help of the staff of the sanctuary, I mean, just the help caring for Dylan, it would relieve such a load off her shoulders. And Lux's family is super into the whole thing, so it's like both of our families are all over it.
Right.
And long term, I mean, it's one-stop shopping to take care of my nephew's future, my sister's career, and our legacy.
Right.
So you started dating January 2017. As I understand it, you will not get married until you can get married
On our
your
land.
animal
Right, that's the idea.
sanctuary.
Yeah, we want to buy our land, and that's where we want to get married.
And that's all we know about anything with the wedding.
Yeah.
We have no opinions or...
Yeah, dude. Woo!
So good to have you guys.
Why don't you give us a tour of the place?
Okay. We take in animals nobody else wants.
Okay.
And we bring them in and we rehabilitate their bodies. And then once they're healthy and happy, if we can find them a home of their own, great. And if not, then we give them sanctuary here for the rest of their lives.
And so what kind of animals are here?
We rescue horses, cows, pigs, sheep, goats, chickens, turkeys, peacocks, llamas, dogs, cats, donkeys, and parrots.
Wow.
We're gonna be mobbed by goats. Try to keep it on the down low.
Okay. Time to feed some animals.
Yeah, they've already figured out what we're up to.
That's my finger, buddy. Who's this guy?
This is Romeo. Romeo is the nicest male turkey we've ever had in the history of the Gentle Barn. Most male turkeys just want to show off. I tell him even boys need kisses. Aww.
Every decision that I've made that's been motivated by compassion has rewarded me. After I quit eating meat, I went to rehab, and then I moved into this halfway house, and it was super dingy, and I said, I'm going to get a new pillow. So I showed up at the store looking at the pillow selection, and some had feathers and some didn't. So I called Michelle and I said, are pillows with feathers cruel? And she said, oh God, they're so cruel. They rip the feathers out of these birds while they're still alive, I guess, so that they can grow more feathers, they can rip them out too. It's terrible. And my decision to buy the pillow that didn't have feathers, I found rewarding.
What are some easy choices that the average person could make that would make a big difference?
Yeah, I mean, there's man-made everything now. It's so easy. Man-made vinyl seats for cars, man-made leather boot or vinyl boots. We don't have to exploit animals. They even make a feather-like substance for people that are allergic to feathers.
Synthetic down.
Synthetic down.
Yeah.
It's so easy now. They're literally man-made everything. And so just little changes can promote so much compassion and kindness. Hi, babies, you climbing? You climbing? They love their rocks.
Living the life.
Here's where the pigs are sleeping. Let's go see them.
Whoa, those are big guys.
Hi, guys. So this is Honey Bear.
Honey Bear.
Honey Bear's around 4 years old. Honey Bear, can we give you tummy rubs, darling? He always says thank you. Right now, I would say he's about 650, 700 pounds.
Wow, they get along pretty well.
Scarlett, maybe you don't want to sit on his face. I call pigs professional nappers. Okay. So that's what they do for a living, they nap. Have a good nap, Honey Bear. You're a good boy. Stanley.
So cute.
All right, Stanley.
Hey,
Persistence
buddy.
pays off, buddy. I've never hugged a cow before. Have
It's
you?
the best.
Oh, yeah. Last time I was here, I'd say I kind of made out with a cow.
Did you?
So this is Faith. She was rescued from the dairy industry.
It's safe to say that the dairy industry is probably the worst, huh?
Agreed.
And why is that?
It's a life of suffering for both the parents and the babies. The advertising are cows over grassy hills living this beautiful, idyllic life, which doesn't exist. Forgiveness is the really big, handsome guy. He is over 3,000 pounds and over 7 feet tall.
Wow.
Yeah, he's amazing when he stands up. Such a gentle giant. Before you leave, you gotta hug a cow. And Steve-O was just doing it. But the best way to hug a cow is like put your face on them and just feel their energy.
Yeah, get in there, bro.
Just close your eyes for a few minutes.
For a few minutes.
Yeah. I have to get cow hugs every single day.
Oh, yeah?
It's the best thing ever.
I thought Steve wanted a cow kiss.
Oh, no.
All right, man. So this is the edit room and my brand new storyboard. Yeah, ever since the beginning, like, that was just my thing. Yeah, dude. When I go on trips, I generally come home with like a cool statue. This, I'm sure, was Morocco. I know this was Philippines. That's Madagascar. This is Peru. That's South Africa. This is Canada.
And what about that guy?
When we did the fire explosion thing, we actually had like a special effects pyro guy. And he showed up with this gift, which is a green smoke bomb grenade.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's active. I don't know, but I've never. Should we pull it?
What does it do?
I don't know. It's just a smoke bomb, I think. I don't know how this thing works.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's. Did you guys get that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not good. Oh, sorry, honey.
For 1 hour.
That was kind of cool, though. Hey, good girl. Hey, good girl. You're a good girl. All right, this is Walter, Bernie, Olive, and Wendy.
Tell us how you met Wendy.
I met Wendy in the streets of Peru, and I fell in love with her and brought her home. And I made a video of the whole ordeal. I was filming at the time.
Right.
And that video is by far and away the most viewed piece of content that I have ever posted online.
Really?
Yeah.
Do all these guys cuddle up with you on the
I
bed,
mean,
typically?
We
All four
encourage
dogs.
it.
Yeah. I actually keep a bucket of treats by the bed so that I can bribe Wendy to come.
Yeah, we have stairs so they can get up and down.
All right, well, so what happens if you guys are like getting intimate? You got 4
Yeah,
dogs
well,
on the bed.
A couple of them have to leave.
Yeah, we have to lock Olive out.
Why? What does Olive do?
Olive has a real taste for semen.
Oh my God.
So yeah, here it is, man. This is the Hollywood Reservoir. It's the tallest thing I've ever jumped off of in my life. And granted, it's not that tall in the big scheme of things.
How high is it?
58 feet is where I'm.
I mean, that's high.
It's a 6-story building, yeah. Yeah, I did a gainer flip, man. I'm super proud of that.
Explain how you got the idea for the tux or suit that you were wearing.
Well, I was so afraid that if I didn't land it right, that I would get really, really badly hurt. So I wanted to wear some pads, but I didn't want it to be obvious. So I have this oversized tuxedo to disguise the fact that I was wearing pads because I was so terrified of landing wrong. But as you can see, I nailed it. All right, let's go ahead and teach you how to blow fireballs.
All right, I'm game. So what's my involvement in this?
You're gonna be doing the fire breathing, and I'm gonna light my head on fire for the torch.
Okay.
Like here's how I would do it. See, it's like kind of wide and misty. Not too bad, not too bad. Maybe get a little more air behind it. Pretty good. Yeah. I think that was, that looked pretty good.
How could I screw it up and hurt myself?
I think it would be difficult for you to get hurt.
Harmful or fatal if swallowed.
Yeah, so don't.
So I'm putting this in my mouth. Do you... Oh, this is great. All right, so now how could I hurt you?
I'll be fine. Like, you don't have to worry about me. So what we have here is level 5, extremely flammable, super flammable.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna spray a bunch in my hair. Then after I spray it all over my head, I'm gonna light my head so my hair is gonna go.
Wait, so that means you want me to blow it really soon thereafter?
Right. You're
Okay,
gonna
so
wanna,
this isn't like a trial run right now. This is the real.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason to like try.
What's the worst thing that can happen?
Like I would like have burns of loose skin on.
I burn your neck and I destroy my esophagus.
Yeah, don't swallow and try not to spit it all over my neck. Okay. All right. Okay, here we go.
You okay?
Yeah, I think that's dope. All right. Woo!
Well, I didn't kill you. Didn't give you burns.
No.
Didn't kill myself by swallowing whatever that oil is.
Right. I could put it out a little sooner, but I didn't get hurt, and I think it looked great.
Good end of the day.
Great job. Yeah. Now let's go to work. Pretty good. Yeah, okay. I think that was really good.
You're like, I'm so.
And imagine it's good this time. Imagine it's real. You're hot, and you want the fire to go as far as possible.
Okay.
Ah.
Okay. No.
Right? Ah.
No.
Less, and more. Ooh, that was really good. That was really good. Yeah, do it like that.
You're like you're trying to put out fire with your mouth.
Okay, let's go.
Oh, you're holding it?
Yeah, there you go. And that was a step backwards. We want to get some air behind it. All right, this is the one.
It took a few tries.
All right. Yeah, all right, I'll take that.
But I eventually figured it out, despite waking up the next morning with a mouthful of blood.
Yeah! Woo!
You okay?
Yeah, I think that's dope.
How awful did I do?
It was pretty bad, but you did it. It's a yes or no kind of a deal. When asked if Graham Bensinger is a fire breather, a bona fide fire breather, the answer is yes. Yeah, dude.
I unknowingly had the genius idea of sucking in, and I sucked a bunch of the oil down my throat, and now I'm splitting headache from it. But I breathed fire with Steve-O.